Hello, my name is Bobby Verdun. I'm from Active Entities Consulting. We're a unique firm that basically supports any type of active living facility. It can be a college facility, it could be a retirement home, it could be a health club, a YMCA, a JCC. Someone who has built a club in their garage will help you, and we love what we do.
Hi, Bobby. So this is great because Bobby is the hubby to one of my really good friends that I actually had on the podcast earlier, Stephanie. And so this is the first time. So usually I have the husband-wife team because they're the owners of a business, but these are two individuals that have two businesses that are running in the house. Oh, we're going to talk about that one. But before we even get to that point, we want to hear. So I start by saying we want to hear about little Bobby. We want to know where is Bobby located? Where did Bobby come from? Like, I mean, just like the Bobby story before the business.
Sure. I'm happily in the shadow of my talented wife, by the way. She is the talent in the house, and she's amazing. And I could go on and on. But I was, growing up into a lot of different things, from sports to music. Probably had much more talent in the music realm. My family is very musical. My mom went to Juilliard with Barbra Streisand, and my father was a concert musician, and my brother is a professional musician. So I had all the genes to do that, and I, of course, chose to do something completely different. Being 5'7" and not very athletic, of course, I chose sports, right? That's the thing you do.
Wait. Let's just wheel back a little bit. We're going to get to Barbra Streisand, by the way. But where did you grow up? Like, where are you from? Like, so where did Bobby come from?
Yeah, I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and my parents divorced.
What, that's not a New England accent that I hear? What?
No. I have a whole set of Yankees hats behind me if you would like me to put it on. And I only have gotten beaten up once wearing them around here. No, I love New York. My parents divorced when I was very young, so I was back and forth to New York and Boston. Very, very comfortable, too comfortable in New York. I was actually about 5 minutes or less from where John Lennon was shot the night he was shot. That's a whole other story. But my parents...
We have the time. This is a good thing about this. We have the time.
I was at the Boys and Girls Club in New York, and we decided that we had been running the court all night. When you win, you stay on the court. And it was a Monday night. I'll never forget it, because I would go home on the weekends to New York and then go back to Boston and go to prep school, because my parents wanted me the heck off the streets because I was very comfortable in New York. Well, anyway, we decided to stay a little bit later. We come out, we figure we'll get the E train, we'll get back to Brooklyn, no problem, plenty of time. We get outside and all hell had broken loose. Because literally right around the corner was where the Dakota was. He was shot. So the trains had stopped. They were looking for whatever whoever it was at the time, they didn't know. So we were screwed. We had to really find our way home creatively, which we did. Yep. But I love that energy of New York. It's always something that's in my blood. And but I went to prep school in Boston and decided to go to Franklin Pierce up in New Hampshire. And I was involved with basketball and tennis programs there. Greatest experience a person could have for someone who, as I said, my only talent on a basketball or tennis court is I just outwork people. And that was it. I was the first one there, the last one to leave, slept over in the gym many times before games. I just love the art of competing is something that I think is my only virtue as an athlete. And I love competing. When I get out of college, I decided.
Wait. See, we're going to slow you down. You're younger. You are, so you're going from Boston to New York, which of course sports states. Everyone knows the competition between Boston and New York. You're growing up between the two worlds. You've stated that you're comfortable you're too comfortable on the streets, meaning that you're just like constantly finding ways to play basketball. There's not one point where I can drive through New York and you're going through the boroughs and you're seeing courts. You're seeing people outside playing sports all the time. that comfort, the comfort wasn't you getting in trouble. The comfort was just, it could have been, but tell me, was the comfort getting in trouble or just finding the next
No.
game and the next game and the next game?
No, my comfort level was diversity.
Mm.
My comfort level was meeting all different types of people, didn't matter. It was a melting pot wherever we went. And I'd go into neighborhoods in Bed-Stuy where you're not supposed to go past 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And it didn't matter to me. I was with a basketball. I was with people that I kind of knew. I had to prove myself all the time. Then you walk down Kings Highway and yes, there's crime going on, especially in the late 70s, early 80s. I mean, that was a tough time for a lot of people, but I always felt comfortable. I always felt like I had the ball in my hand. I was never, I mean, there are a few times that you walk home and you're like, oh boy, people are following you and whatever, but you know what? You learn from that. And I feel like today, especially living in a town like Marblehead, which I love, but my kids don't have the street sense that we were forced to have growing up. And I live on that today. So I loved it. I love the intensity of walking home from Bed-Stuy. I lived on East 15th and Avenue O, which was, and my grandfather was actually a cardiologist. I lived with them, and he basically took care of everybody in the neighborhood. Didn't matter. You just walked in and he would take care of you. That's how it was. Christmas Eve, I'd go to church as much as I'd go to temple. Midnight mass was a ritual, and we go back to a feast at one of my neighbor's house. So I loved it. But my parents, even though they were divorced at the time, they knew that I needed some structure. If I was going to survive as I got older, and I did. And it turns out, many of the kids that I grew up with, it didn't end very positively. A number of them went to jail, were killed. Various things have happened. So I was lucky. I had the best of both worlds.
How was that for you to now you're going from Boston, Boston, New York, but then now you're going to a prep school.
I hated it.
Okay, you just said it.
It was force feeding vegetables. It was the counterculture to everything that I was internally. When you are growing up in the city, it's you have an identity that's all about you. It's an individual. How you play basketball, how you play tennis, how you interacted playing street ball. You go to the corner and you would grow your social skills and leadership skills because you have to figure it out with each other. When I went to prep school, it was boom, 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 boom. Everybody does the same thing. And this is how we've been doing it for 100 years. And I honestly, if it wasn't for sports, I don't know how I would have survived. Sports was my outlet. So at the time, you weren't allowed to do sports and music. And that's why I chose sports, because, at most schools, especially with Prop 2.5, when that came in, you had to choose. You didn't have time to do both. You were either in a school play or you played sports. And I chose to play sports because I knew I had so much energy that I'd go crazy. So yeah, it wasn't a great experience for me. It had nothing to do with the school that I went to. Great people there. I have some very good friends that I'm still friendly with from there. But if I had my choice, I would have definitely gone to public school in Brooklyn and lived happily ever after.
The thing is, you would have gone to school and lived happily ever after. But would you be doing? Would your path have been the same?
Well, I think everything happens for a reason. And your pathways, you create as you go. And so I don't believe in predestined type of things. I think if I had stayed there all the time, where I would have wound up, who knows? I'm not a woulda, coulda, shoulda type of person. It's whatever's in front of you, that's what it is. That's what you deal with at the moment. I value the time I had with my grandparents here. I lived with two sets of grandparents. Here during the week with one set, back in Brooklyn with the other set. So my relationships with my grandfathers was just awesome. So yeah, I who knows where it would have gone, but I never look back and go, oh, if I had gone this way. I can't do that.
Are you, I mean, are you able to still keep friendships with anyone that you grew up with in Brooklyn?
We had a group of six that I grew up with. Four are no longer with us. One I lost touch with about 2 years ago. And there's one person that I grew up with that we still stay in touch from a distance. But, you know, when I came here and I got involved in sports, there was a group of, you know, you meet groups of people and you connect. And over the years, I've stayed in touch with, you know, your first best friends are always your best friends. And that's a real true statement that from Stand By Me. So those people, all those connections you had up until you were 18, when you see those people, you're back in that time.
Yeah.
And so I'm lucky. I've been able to stay in touch with several people, not necessarily the group of friends I had, but people, and it's important.
Nice. So where did you go to college and what was your major?
Franklin Pierce up in New Hampshire, a small college. I had a lot of things thrown at me my senior year. I was a pretty good tennis player, tournament level, had some success, a lot of success, but I was a reluctant tennis player. I love team sports. I almost took a scholarship to play soccer, of all things, at Bowling Green, turned it down. I just wasn't a soccer player. I need goals scored. I need action, and no offense to soccer, love soccer, to play it, not watch it. I know how you can fix soccer, by the way, Jodi. The first thing you do is you move the goalpost to the two sides, right? So now the goals are from sideline to sideline. And the second way is you have the shootout before the game. So if you know you're going to lose the shootout, you can pull the goalie or something. But anyway, that's my soccer.
Every single soccer player, football player out there is listening to you. They're thinking, shush, 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 shush.
Yeah. I got up to Franklin Pierce, and you know, I was going to stay there for a semester and figure out what was next. I didn't want to go to prep school because I didn't think I would be there a full year. I had a lot of scholarship offers to play either or sports, but I wanted to play or be involved with both programs. I met someone up there, the basketball coach of at Franklin Pierce, who has been like a father figure to me for ever since I met him, since I was 18. The hardest part of going to Franklin Pierce was it's in the boonies. You're in the middle of the frozen tundra. You know, there were no cell phones back in the day. There were no phones in the dorm. You had to, you know, go to one phone and, you know, wait in line to speak on a payphone to speak to anybody. No cable. You had 3 stations up there, and 2 of them were like, you know, snowflakes coming in the whole time. My junior year, we finally got.
It sounds like you had such a phenomenal time there.
Oh yeah, it was really cool, especially in the wintertime, when it was like, you know, everybody's gone from Ringe and Jaffrey except for the, you know, the 11 people that work there. But no, I really enjoyed my time at Pierce. It was too small for me. If I had to do it again, I would probably, I mean, as I said, you can't go back. I have great relationships from Pierce. But I would have much rather have gone to a bigger school knowing what I know now.
Just to even put that out there, you went to prep school and you were in the prep school was in Massachusetts or in New Hampshire?
Yeah, fair. It was in Braintree. Yeah.
Yeah. So why New Hampshire? I mean, because New England in itself, Massachusetts, over 215 universities, colleges, and trade schools. You could have chosen anything. Why did you choose to go there?
So I remember I did a college tour with my mom, which was one of the best times I ever had with my mother. My mother is a story in herself. She wound up years later marrying one of the Olympic chairmen of Australia and lived in Sydney up until she passed away a couple of years ago. But that college whole experience for me was the best time we ever had. And I used that experience with my daughter when she just went through it. I had a lot of scholarship offers, and I knew that I got some great advice from somebody once. They said, go to a school where, God forbid, you get hurt, you're going to still like going to school. And most of the schools were offering me scholarships. I didn't want to go to school in Ohio. I didn't want to go to school in the middle, of Illinois, Florida. I wasn't a big Florida person. So I just wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I mean, if someone had offered me a scholarship at St. John's in the middle of New York, I was there, but they weren't. So I said, Franklin Pierce was offering the opportunity to be involved in two sports. They were offering me the opportunity to, I was a good student coming out of a prep school. They don't get too many of those kids. So it basically, for the first year, I was going to go there via scholarship or whatnot and make a decision. I just never left. And I didn't leave. And this is probably the advice I gave my daughter is, don't let your education or school get in front of your education. And the people that I met, Coach Kirsch, some other people from Franklin Pierce, that just pulled me back there. And it was stronger than not wanting to go to school in New Hampshire. Nice.
What was your major?
Initially, it was communications. And then I decided that I was going to major in, I don't know what it's called now, but recreation management with a minor in education and psychology. I really like school and I wanted to be busy. So I was basically a tri-major or a double major with a minor is what it was. And
wait. So you were going to go either communications, which is pretty much like communications, liberal arts. Like, I don't know what I want to do, so I'm going to go there. And then you just went and gave me a huge, can you just go one more time over that title?
Yeah.
Of what that-
So I had aspirations, to be involved. ESPN was just starting and Franklin Pierce had a tie with ESPN, but we hadn't built our communication building yet. So it was going to be a year away and I'm as impatient as the day is long. So then I went to some management class and some professor got up there and talked about, running, if you like to coach, if you like to be involved in kind of developing programs and building teams and whatever. And I was like, whoa, this is cool. I didn't know they had a major for this. Psychology was something I always wanted to do. I always was involved with some sort of reading about psychology and whatever. So that was intriguing to me. And then education was something that you did because I needed to, if I was going to stay my senior year, I needed a minor. And I was the only guy in the class, which is a whole other story. Some funny stories on that one. No matter what, I was getting out of there with a B+ because I was a dude. And but the three kind of clicked. And you know what? Today, I really use things from all three experiences. So again, things happen for a reason. I never went back to communication.
What was it that compelled you to? Clearly the love of sports is clear. Mind you, there's sometimes I would interview someone or I would be on the Zoom with somebody and then their backdrop would be all sports. Clearly it doesn't tell me that you're a sports guy from looking in your office, but from the story thus far, everything about you has been driven by sports. Your love and your passion for it, you found ways to connect with it. Your college career, how was it that the professors, your experiences with sports, how did it really just formulated to the point where you are right now and what your company does?
I've thought about this, Jodi, and sports is, how do I say this? It's a road, right? It's a road that allows me to drive the car I like to drive. And the car I like to drive is compete. It could have been music. I'm competitive if I'm in a line at Crosby's, and I see a guy that's shopping. I'm like, I'm going to get there before he does. So I don't know if my love for sports, it doesn't come close to my love to compete. And that really is what it is. I compete with myself every day, learning to play the guitar. That's a competition that I battle every day and I lose every day. My kids, I never, ever push sports on either of them. And both of them are athletic. Zachary hits a ball much better than I did at his age, but he's competitive in the classroom. He's a straight A student at St. John's and he tackles academics like I used to tackle other things. So I can relate to him like that. you know the mouth, Hannah, my daughter, she's amazing, right? She's strong-willed. She gets on stage. She's competitive as hell on stage. So those are their avenues. Sports for me was something I think, because when I was young, someone said, oh, you're too small to play sports, or you're not fast enough to do this, to play college sports. And when I hear can't, it's a switch. And so with music, it was always like, you scored in the 99, I scored in the 99th percentile of some aptitude test, and they were offering me a free scholarship to New England Conservatory of Music to pursue it. It's like, I don't need to do that because I know it comes easy to me. I want to do things that are hard because that's how I'm built. So that's really what it is. I can't watch a full game. You'll never see me watch a full basketball game unless I'm playing in it or unless I'm coaching it, because I can't. I'll drive my friends crazy.
Why is that?
Because I'm not involved. I have no control over what's going to happen in the game. And so I watch it and I get disgusted sometimes. Oh man, why are they doing this? What's going on here? And if I'm not competing in it, then to me, it's just background music. I'll read a book and have the game going on in the background, but that's quite a misnomer. People think that I'm always, ready to watch a game. I don't think I've watched a full game in 30 years that I'm not involved with.
How are you? Because I know Stephanie, and because Stephanie's one of my really good friends, I've known of you, and I'm spending more and more time with you because we're doing projects together. But that competitive persona, and yet you're helping other people, because most people that are competitive are very much about themselves. And you say that you compete against yourself. Most of the individuals that have the persona of being competitive are very self-absorbed. You're not. You're constantly giving. You're constantly finding ways to get people to succeed. Did you get that from your grandparents? Did you get that from the school? Did you get that from your mom and dad? Where did that come from? Because it's like it literally, the scale is like so not balanced as I'm listening to it, where you're competitive, but yet you're a helper. How does that work? Or how did you make it work?
The competition in what I do is to bring somebody from where they're at to a level they couldn't imagine. That's the competition. It's not, if I'm talking to a potential client and another person is talking to a potential client and we're both vying for it, I can honestly tell you, and I say this to a client, whether you work with me or not, if I can answer a question, call me. That's not the competition. What our firm does is so unique anyway, that there's not a lot of people out there that do what we do. But the competition is really in how do I find their pain, is what I always say. What's their pain? Where can I get to them and then erase the pain? That's the competitive spirit that we bring to the table.
That's your business though, but I'm not talking about your business yet. I'm talking about you. How are you balancing that whole entire concept of you're competitive in yourself? And how did you figure out, or who helped you figure out that, okay, you can be competitive and help people at the same time? Because before the business, there was like a lot of other things that you accomplished. So, because we're not at the business yet, because like there's college and then there had to be something. All right, I'm assuming there was something before the business. So how did you get to the point where I know who I am, I know how to figure it out, so I'm able to help other people? Were there highs, were there lows? Because there's a gap there that's just not connecting for me.
I got into coaching. And when you become a coach, there's a transitional period, right? Where you're not a player anymore. That's a hard transition. My first year, I was a JV coach at Canton High School, and I've got kids that are far more athletic than I was. And I realized at that point that they don't need to play every bounce of the ball like I did. They can find their different rhythm. And I found that taking kids that have much more talent and bringing them to another level was such a high for me. I wanted them to go further than I ever did. And it was an easy story to tell because they would look at me and they go, how the hell did you play at a high level? And I would look at them and say, well, just imagine what you can do. And so now the competition became, okay, I've got to consistently challenge these kids and get everything out of them, not just for wins and losses. We never talked about wins and losses. The greatest memories I have, and we had a lot of wins, but it was the bus rides to and from big games, the plane rides. What happens after a great practice? What happens after a crappy practice? So, for me, it was challenging those kids to be better I love that. And it's the same thing now with what I do. It's taking everything I've got and never being satisfied with who I am. I'm always trying to improve and get better because there's always somebody out there that knows more than I do. Mm-hmm. And then how do I translate that to my clients so they feel empowered now to take that and go with it? That's the greatest feeling in the world.
So when you became a coach, so like you graduated from college and then you went and became a coach. I mean, obviously that transition doesn't happen just like that.
Yeah, I played a little professional tennis and got my butt kicked all over the place. Playing against guys from Sweden who, I played basketball, tennis, soccer, street hockey, stickball. Right, this kid from the age of 2 played nothing but tennis. Right. So I remember I was playing a match before a major tournament. I hit the best forehand of my life, Jodi. I put every ounce of me I could, and that thing came back at me twice as fast, like it was nothing. Yeah. And I said, okay, this is going to be a long day. So, but it was a great experience. I feel like I got everything out of it I could as a player. And the next best thing was, okay, I was playing pickup basketball, and the head coach at Canton High School said, I saw you play through college and know who you are. It'd be great if you could come down and work with some of my players. And I showed up one day and I said, well, what do I do? He goes, well, just show them what you do. Yeah. And I was the first time I'd ever been in that situation. And I was scared out of my mind. I was
going to ask you, Mike, because you hadn't mentioned any coaching throughout. And so how did you even learn? I mean, did he give you a guideline, or
he said, you just take my guards to the other half of the court and show them what you do. And all I did was go back to the things that I did when I was a kid, Yep. Basic drills. I would get yelled at dribbling a basketball in the kitchen because it was the only hard surface in the house. Right. Yeah. So I would show them, the fingertip drill. I would show them how to do certain things. And then gradually, when I get into something, I get into it. And I started to study different coaches and how they taught the game. I would go see game after game all around Boston at the time, Boston College, Northeastern, all the way up and down the East Coast. I would go wind up at a game just to see how, listen in on timeouts, what they were teaching them. Then I would get into practices and I would see, okay, get this drill. This is a unique drill. Could I spin a drill like this? And you build your library. I'm a product of probably 500 coaches out there. And then gradually you get your own system created. And then you always tweak that. And I was very lucky. I had some great success as a high school coach, as a college coach. I just had great kids that wanted to play. And maybe that was the common denominator when I recruited players. They all had to be tough, meaning mentally tough, not physically tough. And they all had to be coachable. They all had to care, and they all had to be committed. Committed to school, committed to getting better. That was it. We never talked about winning a game. We always talked about the things we needed to do to walk off that court, leaving it all on the court. And the one thing that I'll say is that most of my teams, and we won a lot, which was great because of the players I had, but we left it on the court. We just played every minute, and it was fun. It's fun to be part of.
There are 3 things that you said, and I go and honestly, because I was listening to you and I probably forgot a few of them. But number 1 is that whole entire library, like all the different coaches that you had, that you created this library, and that right there is a nugget where people sometimes forget that when you're meeting me and my company or my product or my services, those things, the product, the service, the company, are all stemmed from all this knowledge that I've built up throughout my life. And that's why you have to focus on the individual before you focus on the product, the service, or the business. So I love that you just said that, where you're a library of everything that you've been taught. Coachability is huge. There are so many
Everything.
people. Yeah, there's so many people that walk into every situation saying, "I know it all. I know it. I'm good. I'm fine," and then they feel like they walk in with arrogance, and they get blocked because someone wants to mentor them, someone wants to teach them, someone wants to coach them, and they won't allow it because the wall is up so high. How do you help someone that's at that point where you've been dealing with all these people, high school and college students, and you see the talent, and you know that they can do so much for themselves, but they can't get out of their own way? What do you do with that?
It's unfortunate that that happens so often now, because kids are told at an early age are the greatest thing, you know. I had an incident when I first came to Marblehead. There was a parent that came up to me and said, "Hey, can you evaluate my son, see if he's a scholarship player?" The kid was in like 8th grade. And I said, "No." He goes, "Well, can you tell me?" He's like the best kid around. I said, "Okay, meet me at the Lynn Boys and Girls Club Saturday morning at 8 o'clock and tell your son to bring his sneakers." So he walks in, and there was a bunch of 6th graders playing. And the kid walks in, and I said, "Well, go out there." He goes, "Well, these kids are young." I said, "Go out there. You're a guard. Get the ball." Couldn't make it over half court. These kids just killed him. And I turned to his father and I said, "Need I say anything else? Being the best player in Marblehead does not mean that he can play at the next level."
Yeah.
And this kid, up until that point in time, all he was told was how good he was.
Mhm.
And so, unfortunately, what happens to a lot of kids is they get to a point where their physicality or their abilities, their natural abilities, they're matched. So
Mhm.
now it becomes a game of mental toughness. It becomes a game of intelligence.
Mhm.
And if they shortchange themselves, they don't make it. And you do your best to communicate that. The greatest. Do we have time for a 2-minute story?
Oh, absolutely.
I've got the greatest kid I've ever coached was I had torn my Achilles, Jodi, which God help us, never do it. And I was going to Salem State, and I was able to work out in the gym there, just in the recreation gym. So every night I'd go there and I'd limp up to the basket and shoot and try to get better. One snowy night, it was right around Christmas time, there was a kid that walked in, and he had a cane, and you could tell that something had happened to him. So in basketball circles, this always happens. I'm at one end, he's at the other. We're both kind of looking at each other. We finally get closer and closer. The young man's name is Anthony Hodges. And I just get emotional thinking about it. But he had been in a car accident, was the starting point guard at Salem State, quick as a cat, just the ultimate glue stick type of kid. Car tips over. He's basically, his left hand's paralyzed, his left foot is half paralyzed, and he's out there just trying to get it in the basket. And so we spoke for about a half hour, and I said, "Well, what's the ultimate goal?" He goes, I want to play again. I want to get in a uniform." And I said, "All right, meet me here tomorrow morning. We'll start." We worked out every single day. We didn't miss a day. He had some operations. We got through it. Played his senior year, scored legitimate baskets. When he walked into that game that first time and he made a shot, I was a basket case. And it takes a lot to get me emotional. That's what it's about, those moments. And that's why I love coaching.
How do you convert that same answer to now adults? Because now you're walking in with a full baggage of life, but also the ego is larger. And yet you still have to try to get them to get from point A to point B. Because again, the college students, they're still kids, but they're getting to that adult. I know that you worked with adults. I mean, like men that are they're getting paid a lot of money. People that are, whether they're in professional sports or people that are just doing recreational sports, people that are broken, that are just trying to find their way again. How do you convert that same, like, hi, show up, look, check the ego? But for kids, it's easier. Now you're doing it for adults.
You got to find their pain. You got to get them down to their raw core and bring them back to a place that they were successful at some point, or they felt confident enough to let the guard down, and that's the hardest part is earning that trust enough that they're willing to take the journey with you, or bring me onto their journey and change what's going on. A lot of the times that we work with people who are desperate over COVID, we worked with over 100 clubs that were doing everything they could to keep the lights on. So it wasn't hard to dig in with that. Sometimes you get somebody, the hardest ones are the ones that are doing pretty good, to convince them that they can be great. But to be great, they may have to be pretty good for a while and learn how to be great. That's the hardest trust faith right there. But I think people know me. I lay it on the line. There's no baloney at all. Tell it like it is with tact, which I've gotten better at because of my wife, Steph. She's the master of smiling and telling you you're in trouble. But yeah, we I think as a group, our team is really pretty good at just saying to people, look, you can stay where you're at. And a lot of times people will come back to us later. They won't come with us initially. And then they'll go deeper into the hole and say, you were right. You were right about this. You were right about that. And I said, well, I don't need to hear that I'm right. I want to hear that you're ready now to change. Change is hard for anybody, especially when you become an adult. I think it's the hardest characteristic to accomplish. And if you can change, then, then we can work with you. You're coachable.
I think that I'm going to push you back on that one. I don't think change is hard. I think listening is harder.
I agree with you. That's a great point.
Yeah.
You have to be able to listen to change.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so sometimes listen to yourself.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So because you couldn't help yourself every single time you answered the question, you kept like injecting work. I'm like, I just want to hear about you. But so now I'm going to ask, who's your perfect client and what do you guys do specifically for clients? Ooh. What's the pain point that you're solving? Because you went from coaching and there's a gap where you went from coaching and then you have your business. So talk a little bit about how you went from coaching, what happened, and then you started your own business. But who's your perfect client and what do you do for them?
Well, I was literally on the path to be sitting on an NBA bench. I had some great opportunities presented to, at the time it was just Steph and me without the kids. And I had a very intense conversation with a pro coach named Don Casey, who said he took Steph and I out for lunch on Newbury Street. And he said, are you guys going to be okay with Bobby being gone 250 days a year? I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, if you're going to be an NBA coach, you're married to the NBA. Mm-hmm. He said 70% of the coaches in the NBA, they're not married, or they were married. Yeah. So that really triggered a lot for me. And what I said to Steph was, when we're lucky enough to have a family, coaching is over for me. And I didn't realize it would happen so quickly, but it did. And so I had a shift. I had to now figure out what the hell I'm going to do with the rest of my life. So there was a gentleman named Steve Goldman who owns the Weymouth Club. And he had heard through the grapevine that I was getting out of coaching, literally turned down a position with a pro team, and was coming back to Boston because that's where Steph was from. And she wanted to be back in the Boston area. And so he and I met, and he happened to be building a club in Canton where I had coached. And he said, I'll teach you the business if I can use your name, because we had a lot of success when we were there with the teams. And it was a great marriage. First thing I did, Jodi, was get in my car, gave Steph a kiss goodbye. And for the next 15 days, I think I visited 87 health clubs up and down the East Coast. Everywhere I could go, read everything I could. I jumped into this like there was no tomorrow because I didn't know what I was getting into. Thank God it was Canton, and people would walk into the sales trailer and see me and they go, oh my God, what are you doing back here? And I had relationships with people from Stoughton, from Sharon, from Canton, from Easton, which was the market. And we killed it. We opened the club with, we were supposed to open, I think, with 600 members. We opened up with almost 1,500 members. And it was just a great ride. And then I became his general manager at both the clubs. at Weymouth Club and Canton Club. And I think I realized early on, I love the journey too. But once it's up and going and it's running in all cylinders, it got a little boring for me.
Yep.
I like to fix things. I like to build things. I like to create teams. And when things are going on all cylinders, you sit there and you go, okay, what's next? Let's do another club. Well, they didn't want to do another club. So that's when I made the pivot. It was a hard decision, but I took a position with a YMCA in Pawtucket that nobody in the country wanted. Nobody thought that it was possible to do anything in Pawtucket. We built a $10 million facility there and we hit it out of the park. Great staff, great community, needing a facility. And then I kind of went from project to project. We went down to Maryland, Tennis Center at College Park, got a program going there. I was with ML Carr for a while, the former Celtic, with a nonprofit organization, a role model thing. And then I just got into consulting. It was like the best of both worlds. It was, I could go from one project to another, and give back all the experiences that I had gained.
Yeah.
And the one thing I'll say is that I learned from every project I'm involved with, even today, even though project A is identical to project B, it's so different. It's just like coaching. If you have two Jerrys and they look alike, I had twins that I would coach and they're different. And that's where you learn and you grow. And that's what we do. We help facilities and people. We help people, not facilities. We help people. And we love what we do.
How was the transition for you? So March 2020, the buzz all over, I was in Mexico and I was on stage when I started hearing the buzz. My cousins were calling me and they were like, I think you should stay in Mexico because the US is starting to shut down because of the pandemic. I get here literally a week before Mexico shuts the borders. But everything that I had was just gone. I spent 70% of my time overseas or with my international clients, and everything was gone because now everyone was like, I don't know what's going on, but all I know is we can't meet face to face. You just said, I work with people. How was it when you started hearing the buzz? So you're January, February, 2020, this is a new decade where we're doing our thing. And then all of a sudden things started rolling out, shutting down, especially for the targeted audience that you're going after. What was it for you when it first started happening? What happened during? And as it's starting to roll out a little bit, we're going in the United States, we're a little bit in better shape than most, but globally, we're not even remotely where we need to be to end this pandemic. So walk me through the process of buzz, moment, and then as it's rolling out.
Yeah, we had just had a phenomenal year the year before, and we're poised to make a lot of changes, which we're doing now with the symposiums. And then all hell broke loose. The first thing that came to mind, I was conflicted because the essence of a health club is community.
Yep.
It's the antithesis of social distancing, right? But on the other hand, we work with primarily privately owned clubs. It's not like Lifetime Fitness where they can lose $1 billion and still make $4 billion. We're talking about Joe Fitness at the end of the corner there that's making a living, but if anything, it's fragile, right? So I was upset that the leadership of the health club industry was saying, keep the doors open at all costs. Well, guess what? That was the wrong advice for the independent clubs because they couldn't afford it. Yes. Shut down the club and work something out with your, who you're renting from and say, I can't keep the club open, but to keep it open and have 5% capacity on you or 10% capacity. I think even today, California is still only at 20% capacity. How can you run a business? Restaurants couldn't do it. We couldn't do it. So I was not happy with the leadership that was the communications that were being put forth by our industry. The result of which was the president of our industry resigned. The board director was walked out of the building and there was no leadership. So what it did for us was we somewhat became a beacon for a lot of independent clubs all over the country who saw us out there saying, don't stay open if this and this and this is going on. Don't stay open if you can't clean your club effectively, because there's only one thing worse than being closed, and that's to be open and people contract COVID at your club because you can't afford to keep it clean. You have to look beyond, right? So I was really conflicted. I was upset with the leadership of the industry. And the result was—
just to stop you for a quick second. When you say the leadership of it, so is this I mean, who is when you say the president of the industry, like who is that? Where
international,
what organization is that?
Yeah, it's called IHRSA, International Health and Racket Sports Association. It was an absolute turmoil. Now, we come to find out that it was in turmoil far before this happened, which usually is the case, right? There's always things you find out, a lot of sidebar deals that go on and whatever. And the industry was circling before. It wasn't moving in the direction that it should have gone in, which it is now. I believe, with medical fitness and whatnot. It was just basically a free-for-all, no rules, very, very sketchy as far as the relationships that were being built. And they got caught with their pants down, basically, right? So now we're in the middle of this pandemic. We start getting phone calls from people crying, nervous, scared. What do we do? And we made a conscious decision that we were going to help anybody and everybody that called us. I don't care if they could pay for it or not. We were going to figure it out. And we helped, I think, 131 clubs over the pandemic, all of which are open today, every single one of them. And I would suggest that we got paid maybe for 25% of the work that we did, but it wasn't about that. And I think a lot of people did that, not just in our industry. I think that what the pandemic did was it brought forth people who love working with people. And we're not unique in that regard. We just felt good that we were able to make that difference. So now where we're at is, I think that IHRSA has a new leader they're going to announce today. They're revamping a lot of their models. The person who stepped in as the interim director, Brent Darden, I think did a pretty good job at least settling the ship. But our industry is at a crossroads right now. You know what happened was they were coming out with the mirror. They were coming out with Peloton and this and that and health clubs. You don't need health clubs. Baloney. You need community. People need people. People need accountability. There's enough room for everything in the industry, and it will be better for it in the long term.
Well, you're allowing me to segue into what happens to the industry next, because yes, you're right. The Peloton stuff. I went to a vendor, and one of the gyms were closing down. They just opened in February. They had to close down in March. They thought it was going to be for short term. It ended up being long term, and they couldn't keep. So I got a Kaiser. Which of course, I love my Kaiser. I get up at 4:00 in the morning. I can be on my bike. A Kaiser is an indoor bike. I'm not a Peloton person. I'm not into fads, but the Kaiser is a tried and true, and it was like a winner. And I got it at a fraction of the cost because it was a brand new thing that was sitting collecting dust. So what happens to those individuals like me where we bought our equipment? I'm not a gym person. I love getting out, going for a run, but I get up early and I just don't want to wait till that gym opens up or those organized classes. I just need to get it done because I am busy. So what happens to the industry now? Because little by little, people are going, there are people that are going to I need the gym because that is for my sanity. But there's a lot of people that are like, I can't justify the gym membership and or my safety. So what happens to the industry now?
Well, we have to remember health is important to people, but health clubs are not important to people. Okay. And what's important to people is the culture that's created in these particular clubs. I think from an industry standpoint, we've lost nearly 26% of all health clubs close for good. And what now is going on is you're seeing somewhat of a renaissance in the industry, that clubs are starting to get filled up again, but it's only replacing people with displaced people. So if there's 5 clubs in Marblehead and now there's 3, there's probably 2,500 people that are looking for a new club. That's going to dry out probably by the end of the summer. Plus, in the summertime, people tend to go outside anyway.
Yeah.
We and I've been, our team really preaches this. It's the underserved. It's the the people who are deconditioned. A lot of people died because they were out of shape. They were heavy. That was the first thing that COVID hit, was the people that were deconditioned. So now there's a sense of urgency to at least be conscious of, you need to be in some semblance of physical condition to survive something like that. I think there's going to be a hybrid of sorts, Jodi. I hate getting on a treadmill. I hate going to a class. I love going out and playing basketball or playing tennis or playing whatever, doing something constructive in that regard, climbing a mountain. So what we're starting to see is we have a program called the Club Without Walls, where you meet at the club, but then you go hike, or you meet at the club and you go do yoga at a beach. You're going to see a lot more resources being used, and the clubs be used as a home base. You're also going to see a higher caliber of program offerings, more medically based fitness, transitional things going on. So I see a lot of great things developing because of what happened with COVID that are coming forth right now. That doesn't mean that you put your Pelotons away or you put your Kaisers away. I think there's going to be a nice balance of both. And I think there's room for technology. Technology gives you the opportunity. If it's snowing out, I mean, our kids are never going to have a snow day again. Think about it. Because
I heard that. I heard that they were thinking about that. Whereas snow days will be eliminated because they know that they can do it online. I'm like, snow days are really, it's a mental state as well. So
yes, believe me. I used to create snow days when there wasn't snow days, but that's a whole other story. But I think what you're going to see is if it's a really crappy day and the club has to be closed, go to channel 3 and we'll do the class remotely. So I think there's going to be a lot of that. The clubs that do it right, that go the extra mile, that create the experience that's exceptional, they're going to win. Clubs that try to shortchange it, they're not going to win. They're not going to survive. And that's where I see it being right now.
What would you say to someone so you went through being being a player to coaching to now coaching at another level. You made that decision of converting into a consultant. What would you say to someone that is during this pandemic, they were at home, they were getting paid, they didn't like their job, they had a micromanager, they're stressed out. They really felt that their health got dramatically better by being at home and running their own ship. But the whole entire concept of not getting that everyday check or that life insurance or that health insurance, all of that is like, if I run it by myself, I lose all those things. Will that not create another stress? What would you say to someone that is thinking about going that route? And what are the highs and what are the lows that you went through?
You got to have an incredible partner. That's the first thing I say without hesitation. I mean, Steph, I was offered a lot of different positions to run a lot of different facilities. And I knew that I didn't want to do that. I knew that coaching was not going to happen because my kids were very young and I wasn't going to sacrifice that. I didn't have a relationship with my father for various reasons, and I wasn't going to have that happen to my kids. I think that's where it started. Steph looked at me and said, go for it. And I did. And then you've got to have a unique concept, value, and belief in yourself that you figure it out as you go. I thought I was just going to do consulting. Now we're doing symposiums all over the place and selling those out. And we're making, in our symposiums, we're bringing in a psychologist to talk about depression. It's not just about fitness. It's about expanding, it's got to be more than just your box. You've got to be able to go in and say, hey, how can I impact the industry? How can I impact and make a difference in the industry that I love, but I know that it needs to grow. And so I've always had that idea of I'm part of a whole, but I'm a big part and I can make that part be important. And that's how I went about it. But it starts with your partner, really does, honestly, because if they don't buy into it, and there were times when we got started early on where it was like, oh boy, okay, how are we going to do this? And, artists don't become gazillionaires until they're dead. And I don't want Steph I'd rather have Steph than $1 zillion. So that wasn't going to happen, even though she's fantastic, by the way, everybody. You go to Stephanie Krause Verdun. Yeah, it's just belief. And you know what? It's figuring it out. That's what life is about, isn't it? It's like a game, right? Your A game plan doesn't work. Your B game plan doesn't work. Guess what? Look at the court and go, what do we need to do here? And that's what it is with this.
What did you add to for yourself and for the company during the pandemic? Because clearly you had a lot of time, you were helping a lot of people, but everyone knows it has to start with helping yourself as well. So what did you do that added to your company, and what did you do to add for yourself?
Great question. While everybody was slicing and dicing, I added. I don't have all the answers to everything, and I never believe so. And one of my mentors, when I was at Weymouth Club, had just retired, and I quickly pulled him out of retirement. And I said, "All right, Rich, guess what? You're now a consultant." And then I found who I call the mustache of knowledge, Jeff Hampton, who, when I first started in the industry, I went to one of his symposiums, and I was blown away by his knowledge. And I said, I need to surround myself with people so much better at this than me, because that's how I'm going to get better. And also we're going to be better. When I became a coach, the first thing I did, Jodi, was I hired a Hall of Famer to be my assistant coach. And everybody said, why are you doing that? He's going to want your job. I had enough gumption to know that I could handle myself, but I also wanted the best next to me. So I've got one of the best teams the industry could offer. And that's the first thing I did. I grew, and I said, we're going to figure this out together. Jeff brought in the symposiums. Rich brought in a whole other mechanism of how to do financials. And we just changed overnight. And that's what we did.
That's awesome. I just love it so much. There's so many people that are aching to be right where you are. You're a consultant. You have honed into what you're doing in so many different ways. And they focus on what they're doing. And this is why I love the long conversation, because they don't talk about the past. So I'm going to rewind just a tad bit, because I have only 2 more questions for you, but I'm going to rewind just a tad bit. Your mom, best experience that you had was like traveling around the schools. Your mother, all about the music. I mean, your father and music, you have it in you. It's just part of your DNA. What did she think of you and what you've created? She watched you through so much of your lifetime. She watched your grandparents guide you. What was her assessment of how she did with you? Without crying.
No, it takes a lot to get me there. My mom was, she was unique. She was, I'll never forget, I was like 8 years old, and my parents were still together. And my father is a great musician. He was asked to be in the Eagles, decided not to. He's recorded a number of things. People can be great at what they do. Maybe they're not great fathers, I guess. So my father was performing one night, and I'll never forget that they asked my mother to come up on stage. And I had never heard my mother sing before, although I had heard that she was really special.
Even in the house, you had never heard her sing?
My mom went to Juilliard. She was a voice and oboe major. You see pictures of her. She had movie star looks, just had it all. And she got pregnant with me when she was very young, and loved being a mom, and then became a teacher. And then actually the 2000 Olympics, she was part of the whole, I don't know if you remember the bow and arrow that turned on the cauldron. They shot it. My mother was part of that development. So she was incredible. But she got up and sang, and I just remember looking around and people were crying, and the impact that she had when she sang the song. And she was she got finished. People were bawling, screaming, blah, blah, blah. She walked off the stage, grabbed our hand, and said, okay, let's go home now. Like it was nothing. My mother, the best thing that I saw my mother be was a grandmother. She and Hannah were so close. And my son, who's not a very, I would say, outgoing, emotionally person, if you walk in his room, he has one picture. It's my mom and him.
Oh.
So I think that describes my mom. The best part of what I saw in my mom was, I think she was proud of me as a dad. And I don't think the professional aspect of things was ever a factor because it wasn't important to her. It was that was important to her. So.
Well, I love it. I love that. That's a beautiful story. God, you're a good storyteller. You're doing some good ones. I'm very, very happy with that one. I say this all the time, but I'm so captivated with everyone's stories that I get so blown away when an hour goes by, because that's what just happened. An hour went by. So I finish with the last question that I ask of everybody. So no matter, this will not be the last time I pull you into the conversation. But every single time you talk to me, I will always end the same exact way. If you had a personal ask and a professional ask, 2 answers, please. What would be your personal ask and what would be your professional ask of anyone that's listening?
A personal ask and a professional ask.
Yes, sir.
That's a good one, man. Holy moly, you might have stumped me. And who am I asking?
Anyone that's listening.
I think from a personal standpoint is that we're in a strange time. You know, I have a teenage daughter who is very, very conscious about social equity and just, you know, I spent an hour the other day learning about pronouns, which if you haven't had that conversation with your teenager, you will. I guess from a personal standpoint, it would be to lighten up. Let's enjoy the fact that we're waking up every day and that this could have been so much worse than it was. When you think about that first couple of weeks when they were shutting down everything and the thousands and thousands and thousands of people, think about it could have been worse. So the fact that we're all here, the fact that, and I know this sounds very altruistic, but I just feel like sometimes you got to pause. And you just got to appreciate where you're at, wherever it is. Mm-hmm. You got an opportunity to go to another day. And you know what? It's like playing in a tournament. You know, you may not have played well, but if you got to play till the next day, then you're still in the tournament, right? From a professional standpoint, I think it's our industry is at a crossroads. I think that I would ask that people who are in our industry right now really take the opportunity to get better at what we do. And people that are going to health clubs and have expectations and whatnot, is the whole magic of what happens in a club or a YMCA or a JCC or, you know, any, you know, boys and girls club. It's community. You know, it kept me alive growing up. There were plenty of times where I saw a lot of guns and a lot of things walking home from bad basketball neighborhoods. And my friends, the people around me, that's what defines you, I believe. And that's why I built the team that I have. If someone looks at active entities today and they see that staff, that I'm batting 7th on this team, and I'm perfectly fine with that because I know I'm surrounded by unbelievable people. And that's about it, Jodi.
You know what? That right there is just like, it makes me smile. People forget their communities. I mean, where as much as people were crazy about the mask and stuff like that, I'm like, you know what? I go, you are just doing a simple thing just to get back to your community. And if you're angry, I mean, for me, at least, I felt if you were angry and you were like taking out on other people, I think you need to like find a better community, find people that will make you happy, because the anger level was through the roof for so many people. And I'm like, what is causing that anger? Because it can't just be a mask. It can't be because you're not leaving your house. It's so much more. And the gyms, the churches, just like, again, like just like if you're walking, for us, we're from Marblehead to Swampscott, there's that court right by the police station, and it's always filled with kids. And when they took down those hoops, it was a killer, not just for here, it was for Nahant, it was like for Cambridge. I was driving around and all the hoops were gone. And no matter how hot it is, kids are out there. No matter how cold it is, they shovel and they're out there. And you took out the way that they can bring their communities together. And so from that level of just like kids on a schoolyard to churches or gyms or hiking or ultimate frisbee, all the ways of keeping people together was definitely lost. And I love that you just said, just getting us back together and just finding ways that we can build a community. But for me, finding the right community is so big and so important, because I think that when you're surrounded by the wrong community, that negativity definitely pulls you down, and the anger is like anything will fuel you. And for you to be you are a part of this community that brings people together in the most positive way. And I thank you for that. I mean, you are the super connector. You are, literally, yeah, you're a little aggressive in the car. I'm not gonna lie to you. Bobby's aggressive in a car. Don't get in a car with him. But honestly, I go, you are just like, you beam when you get to be with the other people. You're beaming when you get to give accolades to other people. You're beaming when you're finding ways to come up with a new idea to make sure that someone else succeeds. I go, you are constantly beaming. And I love that about you. That's one of the things where I was like, I go, this guy's really, really cool. At the beginning, I was like, I go, is he for real? I don't even know if is he a walking piece of BS? But you are literally, you walk the walk. You walk the walk, you talk the talk. But it's even better because I got to hear more of your story, not because I was in the car with you, not because I had dinner with you, because we just shared a moment and you just gave me so much insight into like, I get why Bobby is who he is. And I get why you do what you do for other people. That's why I love doing holding these conversations.
I love it. I appreciate you so much, Jodi. We've heard about each other through Stephanie for a year, and I am so much better getting to know you. I think people are so polarized right now, and it goes back, I think, for the last couple of years. And I'll tell you, 2 seconds. There was my year coaching in Canton. I had a kid who was my manager. Mm-hmm. And between his senior year and junior and senior year, he wanted to be a swimmer. Yeah. So he trained all summer long, right? This kid was just a pit bull. And I kept telling him, I said, Jeremy, to make the team for 1 year is tough. Kid made the team. Then he came to me a couple of weeks later and he said, hey, coach, I'm going to start for this team. He became a starter. So with 2 weeks to go in the season, he came to my office and goes, coach, you got to come to one of my meets because I'm going to win one. So the last meet of the year, I go, the gun starts, they go out, they go down one length of the pool and he's winning. They take the turn. By the time they take the turn, everybody catches him. His mother turned to me and she said, hey, Bobby, what would it have been like if Jeremy had 2 arms? My boy only had 1 arm. And when I tell that story, what that tells you is that nothing is as it seems. Yeah. You got to look beyond what you think is going to happen. And we're so polarized right now as a country, as a community, we got to stop and appreciate the fact that we're all here because a lot of us aren't. And I think that's important.
And for all the people that are not here with us, and I always say this for my dad, for my grandmother, for my very best friend, Christine, that's no longer with us. We are the extension to the people that are gone. Yeah. So let's just be the positive. I go, because if you are angry because someone is gone, you are now the extension to who they are. So turn that around, find a way to turn that around and find a community to help you turn around. So yay, yay, and yay.
And next time we'll give you the bourbon. We'll give you the bourbon before we drive.
Oh my God.
And you'll appreciate my driving skills a lot more.
So Bobby and I were talking about, I go, I'll meet with him if I have bourbon, because I love bourbon, tequila, and water are the only 3 things that I drink. And it is one of those moments where he's like, hey, we get there where I order an old fashioned and he goes, oh no, I don't drink. I'm like, what? We were supposed to have a bourbon together. He's like, well, I don't drink. And I'm like, well, that just defeated the purpose of why I wanted to have a bourbon with you, but whatever. He's like talking about it and then he's like, oh.
Drunk.
Bobby, thank you very much so much. Thank you for taking the time. I go, and I will talk to you guys after. I'll talk to you guys offline. I'll come to the house. You guys have a brand new fire pit, so I'm excited about that.
Fire pit Saturday. Be there.
Woohoo! Bye, my friend.
Bye-bye.